Welcome in. We're talking another college football week, a wacky week two. College football always delivers. So much fun. I want to bring in one of my buddies, one of the smartest dudes I know, has written for PFF over 10 years, knows football inside and out, knows the numbers inside and out. The PFF guys, they're stat geeks, writes matchups and does the film don't lie for UGA matchups every single week. So Brent Rollins, welcome to the stage. The doctor, my neighbor, the man who knows it all about college football.
Well, thank you for having me. Fun to be here. I will say, I think the best thing you said there, college football always delivers. No matter the slate, it always delivers. Always.
It does. It's fun. Well, where did it deliver most though this week?
I,
Because
I think South Bend, Indiana.
I think that I think that hit. I'm sure there's some numbers that Notre Dame fans probably won't want to hear because it's still a little sensitive. That salt is still rubbing in a little bit. A huge win against A&M, and then Notre
And
Dame's
then,
done this. They've done this a couple times, haven't they?
yeah, they've now lost to Marshall, Stanford, a 3-9 Stanford team, and Northern Illinois in 3 consecutive years or 3 years at home since Marcus Freeman has been the head coach. So, yeah, not good. Not good for the Fighting Irish after the big win that then saw them fall on their face a little bit.
I think it stings. If I'm a Notre Dame fan, it really stings because the frustrating thing about it was you watch NIU, they were ready. They did a great job. They weren't scared, which I think happens a lot in NIU. You walk in like I don't belong, but I love Thomas Hammock. He was awesome. His emotion was awesome
Yeah.
after the game. He was like, my biggest thing was telling these guys like we belong. So him getting his team to have confidence was step one. I think if I'm Notre Dame, I'm frustrated because Riley Leonard is a good player. We saw him at Duke. He's a big, strong, athletic kid. What I see consistently for Notre Dame is they're trying to make him a pocket passer. And while you're learning, the greatest thing to me, Brent, and we did this in youth league football, coaching together for years. The greatest thing that I like about mobile quarterbacks is I think it helps me in the development when I got a guy that can run. And as Riley Leonard's developing, I think they should be using an offense that accentuates his gifts, and that is being big, being strong. And listen, so many new pieces, the new offensive line completely, a new OC, new QB. I just think Notre Dame could have done a better job of being who they are and using who they are and using what they have to fit their system. And I think they would have been more successful instead of making Riley Leonard a drop back, read the coverage guy multiple times over and over again, where you see the mistakes when I think you could have used his gifts better.
All the new. I think the point you make there, the biggest point, all the new. And one thing that's at least in their favor is the new structure of college football, the 12-team playoff, and the fact that you can have some level of, now this one is a big one, but NIU is going to be there, and
Yeah.
you never know where they're going to end up being, but still that you can have some of that learning as the season goes on, as long as you're showing up in the biggest of big games and not having it left them to where now the mulligan, now any other, like you have to be on point from here on out for them to be
But
a
here's
playoff caliber because of their schedule.
here's what I'll say about that though. Notre Dame lost several times this week. And I'll say that because Georgia Tech was a ranked game on their schedule going the rest of the way. Georgia Tech loses, not a ranked team obviously anymore. Florida State's fallen off a cliff the first couple weeks of college football. They were playing Florida State. That was going to be a big game.
Yeah.
Brent, the only ranked game they got left on their schedule is
You
USC.
see
Like and here's the thing.
Louisville. I think they got Louisville, right?
And
Louisville. Yeah.
Louisville's a good one, but they're not ranked right now. They probably will be after this week. But it's the interesting thing about that is they also don't play in a conference championship game at the end of the year. So
Right.
there's not another opportunity. And remember, all the conferences have done away with divisions. So there's going to be so many great matchups that last week. And if Notre Dame's sitting there with a loss, being a heavy favorite at home to NIU,
Yep.
and you're trying to compare resumes, and you got other teams from other conferences that you're stacking up, and you're stacking up their big wins. And here's what they've done. And because here's what they do. They look at big wins, but the one thing I've seen about the committee over the years, they look at bad losses. Bad
Yeah.
losses is an anchor that just pulls you down. And there's example after example we could go through to show you of those in the past. This is a really bad loss. Now listen, NIU could be good the rest of the way, but Notre Dame went from the easiest path to the college football playoff now to obviously they don't control their own destiny. they have one ranked team on their schedule the rest of the way. So my goodness, it went from like, dang, they can make this happen to who the heck knows with the
It's
new
going to be
system
tough.
what could happen. Yeah.
It's going to be tough, and especially when you start comparing resumes and what might those resumes look like, and other teams that have the schedules that are just deep as I'll get out with the two power conferences. All right, speaking of power conferences, biggest matchup of the weekend, top 10 matchup, defending national champion Michigan hosting Texas, and needless to say, the Longhorns took care of business. Would you see big time from them?
They Texas proved who they are. Who they are is a team that, dude, they've recruited so well. You watch the transfer portal and what they bring in, wide receiver position, offensive line, the secondary. Like they filled a bunch of holes that they needed to. Sark's still good, by the way. He's a great offensive mind, great play caller. But it also shows you what you got with year 3 with Quinn Ewers. I mean, I saw things in this game that we're going to watch on tape and we're going to break down later on in the week that it was just awesome. It was fun to see him evolve in year 3 in this system, in particular, stepping up in the pocket repeatedly, like feeling the pressure, getting
Eyes
outside the
up,
pocket.
feeling
I
it with
mean, just
eyes up.
yeah, eyes up and using his eyes to also move guys. The way Sark attacks the perimeter, defense played really, really good. Texas just proved that they're not going anywhere. And
No,
listen, everybody does the we're back every year, like we do that with Texas. Like they don't have to do that anymore. You went to the
no,
college football playoff last
right.
year. You're going to join the SEC. You're going to be a player in the SEC. It doesn't matter who you're playing week in and week out. So I think Texas just makes a statement early in the season that not only are we good, like just go ahead and punch us for the playoffs. We're that kind of good.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter who we play.
where we can win it all good. And then that's
Yeah.
one of those. Now, speaking of the other side, I'm sure Michigan fans maybe right now wish they maybe had a different guy. Maybe you know who I think they'd like to have? Kyle McCord would probably look good in Michigan. Right
That's
now.
dirty. That's dirty. That would have been dirty, by the way, if they took an Ohio State quarterback
Yes.
and you put him on Michigan. But man,
Struggling.
I watch Michigan and I felt bad for them because obviously they've been a team that's been defensive led, running game led, physicality, clear identity, who they are, who they want to be. And now they don't know who they want to be. And here's the problem with their offense. Just like with Notre Dame, like I think they should be Riley Lennox centric, using his legs. Everything should build off of that. They have two different quarterbacks that are running two different systems.
Yep.
Orgy is a guy that is athletic as crud. So he's going to run the zone read game. All the QB packages will be for him. Davis Warren's the opposite. He's a sit in the pocket guy. He's a throw it. So this offense practices two different type of systems with two different type of guys, and they looked like it, man. I mean, they looked bad, and they wore their defense out. Their defense hung in for a little bit and kept them around, but the passing game, man, like it's going to have to change. It's going to have to find an identity. The hard part is, and Brent, you know this from calling plays, like when you call plays and you have to run the football more than you pass it, if you run it, if you are aggressive on first down, well, then what happens? Now I'm at 2nd and 10 and I'm behind the
Yep.
8 ball and it struggles with my offense. But you have to be aggressive
Yep.
and pass when they think you're going to run, because Michigan's not good enough up front like they were the last couple years where they can just run it and say, screw you. It doesn't really matter. Like
Yeah.
we're good enough and we're powerful enough with multiple backs to hit you in the mouth and keep everything on our terms.
In that game, they had one run over 10 yards, a long of 12. Like that's not something you're used to seeing with a Michigan offense. I know in the defensive part you spoke to, I know you probably have a little bit of experience of playing defense. Maybe when your offense isn't keeping up, there's that fine line where there becomes a breaking point. What was the number, by the way? You were undefeated or something like that?
Like, you remember this stat, actually.
Yes. Was 17 the number?
17 was the number when we were at Georgia that basically if we got over 17, David Green, like that's all I needed, Greeny, like my roommate, just give us 17 and we were undefeated in my 4 years at Georgia. And by the way, it is frustrating. It's you look over and you're like, dude, what are we doing? Like, and I just remember over and over grabbing my helmet, like, all right, let's go bail them out again. Let's go bail them out again. And by the way, Michigan's defense is good enough to do that.
Yes.
Like The first drive, they made Texas earn it. Now, listen, Texas had three
Third
penalties,
downs.
a touchdown call back, but like was good enough. Their defensive line is going to be good enough to punch people in the mouth. Like Graham on the inside is an animal. They're moving him around, which is good. Will Johnson's one of the better corners in the country, so I think they have good pieces. But it means nothing if the offense can't get some kind of identity. Like they've
Right.
got to get something going. They got to figure out who they are, and man, they got to do it kind of quick. Like
Yeah,
that,
because you got
that's
Arkansas
what I was.
State and then USC.
Yes, USC, which looked like I'd favor Michigan before the season. Now USC obviously coming on, so they're gonna have to figure themselves out quick.
All right. So next thing we're going to do is kind of go a direction of good or bad, and take a first game of the weekend. Is Tennessee good, or is NC State just not good, maybe, or bad? However you want to
Ungood,
turn.
is that what
However,
you're
you,
saying?
I'll let you be the first to phrase those.
Reese Davis would say ungood. I love that. He was so nice. Is Tennessee that good or is NC State that bad? I think Tennessee's that good. I think NC State's a good team. I think they'll continue to be a good team throughout the season. I think Grayson McCraw has really struggled. But here's what Tennessee showed me, man. That defensive line is dirty. And you start watching the guys that they're rotating in and out, like they're going to play eight guys. Like
Yes.
they're good. And they're not just dudes that they're putting in there or big sloppy bodies, like a bunch of guys that can get off the football and be disruptive. And they did a great job against NC State's offensive line. NC State's offensive line has struggled through 2 weeks. Like it wasn't just exclusive in this football game. But listen, we always know what we're getting from a Josh Heupel offense. Like it is consistent. Like even last year with Joe Milton, they still were a pretty decent offense. Like, and obviously Nico makes them really, really good. He didn't even. Here's the scary thing. Brittany, he didn't even play good. Like I
That's
thought he played. I thought he played good. He didn't play great. And you look up, and they're killing NC State. And, he had the bad pick over the middle of the field that it wasn't good. He
yep.
had one that he got crushed when he threw it. Like that wasn't necessarily his fault. But I didn't think we saw the best version of Tennessee, and they destroyed a top
No.
25 opponent. So
It would
I
have been
guess
nice to see that game had the pick six not happen when it could have. NC State was going, it could have been 10-10, I think, and then it ended up being 17-3. But it was NC State, even at that point, it was kind of hanging on and just hanging around, not really dominating or doing anything like that. So
well,
we'll
and
see.
Tennessee, and here's the thing: we think about Tennessee, and we talked about Nico a ton. How about the running game? I mean, consistently they're going to hand the ball off. I mean,
Yep.
hand it off, hand it off.
Let's,
Nico's also going to run it. Like it's not. I think people get it twisted because it's a fast pace, and we hear of Art Briles' system back
yeah.
in the day. Like they're going to run the football, and they're going
It's
to
built
make
to
you play
run.
so many plays, and they get you kind of tired, and then they manufacture these third downs. I think would be a great tape of getting their tight ends involved, getting the screen game involved. You see, Nico is a big shovel pass guy. Oh, by the way, you play the first play great, the second play great, and then guess what? Nico still scrambles at 6'6" with that big frame, scrambles around, runs, and gets a first down. And then what do they do?
And then they're going
They
100
run
miles
back
an
on the
hour.
football.
And they're going 100 miles an hour. And
Yes,
then they're hitting you with a
and
deep
I'm like
shot.
this. My tongue's dragging on the ground. I'm ticked off. I'm like, seriously, again, another one. So I think Tennessee, man, I think they're that good. I think they're in the playoff picture. They're going to be one of those teams, and you can just put another SEC on that ledger.
Well, it's one for I've been critical in a way of Heupel's offense because it's to get to that next step, because I think there was a number in SEC games against everybody but Georgia. It was like 39, 38 points a game, something like that in every SEC game. And then it was maybe 13 it was over a 3-year period against Georgia, to evolve the offense in a way and do some different things to hurt that type of defense. But maybe the evolution is just putting the highest ranked and most talented quarterback he's ever had in the offense. That might just be the evolution. But that's, you talked about it, him not playing well and them still doing what they did. As a coach, you're just sitting there like, oh, I can now rip him in the film. I can rip him on this play. I can rip him on this play. And we still won and we still look good.
And here's the scarier thing: if I'm a person that doesn't like Tennessee or roots against Tennessee, the scarier thing to me is I think if you listen to the hype with Nico, because it's everywhere, it's not going anywhere. It's
No.
going to be here to stay. Now, people want to go play with stars. Like you see that effect every year. A couple years ago with Arch Manning, like Arch Manning commits to Texas, 300 ESPN 300 players are just filing in the gate. Dylan Raiola last when he committed to Georgia, he was bringing people in left and right, like filing them in, recruit after recruit, committing. Like Nico now being there in that system, they go have another great year. Now you get more offensive linemen that want to come play. Now you get more wide receivers that want to come play. You get more defensive players that want to come because they think they can win a natty. And Tennessee, Neyland, you go to that stadium, like it's the loudest singular moment I've ever had in a game. Like playing in that stadium and the crowd was the loudest I've ever heard at any point. Like that's how good it is. Those fans have been hungry. Tennessee should be jacked about what they have.
All right. So speaking of Dylan Raiola, he didn't go to Georgia. He went to Nebraska, and it started the first two games for Nebraska, and they are now 2-0, and they took care of business against Colorado. So, which is Nebraska that good, or is Colorado that bad?
I think this one might be a combination of both. I'm probably not allowed to say that. Like you probably need to stick on a side.
No,
But
there's all kinds of sides here. It's our game. We
yes.
can do whatever.
Okay. Well, I'm going to start with this. Matt Rule's a program builder, always has been. When you watch Matt Rule everywhere he's ever been and you turn on tapes, you're like, dude, physical, tough, discipline. He's a dude. Like he's just got that. If you sit down and talk with him with 5 minutes, you'll be like, I really like that guy. Like he's my kind of guy. And so last year, -17 in turnover margin. You saw the defense be physical. What did we just talk about though with Michigan? Like your defense runs out of gas. Your playmakers aren't accentuated when you have an anemic offense on the other side of the football that keeps putting you in bad spots. Raiola doesn't do that. Hasn't turned
Yeah.
the football over in two
No.
games. You see the running game and the balance on the offensive side of the football. Man, and again, Big Red was going nuts. Like you watch that stadium, it was awesome. Like so good to see that fan base go nuts, go crazy, and have a product on the field now that's worthy of that. Nebraska's going to be 7-0. Like they're going to be 7-0 going into the Ohio State game. Their schedule sets up where even if they lose that football game, Nebraska could still be a player. Now, here's listen, Nebraska's depth is not the same as
Yeah.
everybody else's. So if they can stay healthy, but I think Nebraska's another team that's I think they're that good, even though I do want to talk about Colorado and some of their deficiencies.
Because I would say they are that bad. And it's one of those where if you don't pay attention to the line of scrimmage, I don't know that I can take you seriously because football is a line of scrimmage game. And it's obvious that in the 2 years that Dion has been at Colorado, it's been an area of issue for them. So yeah, I'm going to go the other side with that one.
Yeah, and here's the thing. Like, and here's the frustrating thing, and here's the thing I think that drives wedges and changes things too. Shador Sanders after the game, he's asked about it, and what does he say? Well, Raiola wasn't touched the whole game. Raiola
Yeah.
had a run game, and listen, he's not wrong. Shador is
I
absolutely
say,
not wrong. Like
not,
Shador's getting hit like crazy. They cannot run the football. I would argue they don't run the football either. Like they got to commit
Yeah.
to it at some point, at least to create a little bit of balance. But man, I
you can't
just
say it.
you
You
can't
just
say
can't.
it out loud. Like
No.
you now
Think it all you want.
everybody you should think it, and he should have been thinking it, and I was thinking it, and you were thinking it, and everybody watching the games like, why is number 2 on the ground consistently? Like, but I think saying that doesn't help build this. And
Right.
Colorado's built with a bunch of transfers from all over the place. The hardest thing to do with the transfer portal is mesh worlds together, new
Yep.
guys coming in, get them to care. You're not going to get them to care when we start now dividing them and making comments about that. So that might be a bad sign for Colorado the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's a tough situation with all the change and all that's gone on there. And also when you think about him too with the comments, he's played a lot of football. It's not like he has. I mean, he's got almost over 2,000 snaps. I mean, it's some crazy number in terms of snaps that he's played already. I didn't really expect to hear that, but
He's got some weapons. I mean, it's
yes,
not like
and it's fun to watch Travis Hunter play. But
Travis Hunter, dude, Jimmy Horn is a baller. Like you watch him,
Yeah.
he looks like he can. I mean, he looks like he's in fast forward on tape too. I mean, he can fly. I would like to see Shador get rid of the ball quicker. I mean, he buys time and he wants to make big plays. I don't think. By the way, and this is going to be a topic for another day. Like when I start to evaluate Quinn Ewers and Carson Beck and Shador, I don't think Shador's going to get to that number one pick. I don't think that's something that I consider when I watch them just play the quarterback spot. Shador's talented as crud. Don't get me wrong. His offensive line doesn't help him. He's going to have a successful, probably NFL career. But the processing, the anticipation you see from Beck, the feel you see from Quinn as he's starting to develop more and more, I think they're a little bit of a step ahead of where he's at.
Speaking of the NFL with him, now that they've seen the struggle, like it's going to continue. How do you respond the rest of the season? How do you respond each and every week? How do you lead your team? Those are the things that the evaluators are going to look at. All right,
They're
so
gonna
last
look
one.
how you answer those questions too. I think when he
Yeah.
answers the questions of his teammates and what that looks like, I think that's part of it too. That will be listen. These dudes are watching everything. Like I can't tell you the questions I got. I mean, I remember Belichick asking me like, "What happened when you fell on the head and you fell on the steps and hit your head on that houseboat?" I'm like, "What? That was like my junior year. How do you know about that?" Like nobody asked me
Nobody
about
knew
that.
that.
Do you love football? Like a guy from one team that will remain nameless, the Saints, asked me like, we took one of your guys last year, and he doesn't love football. He doesn't play hard. Like, have you watched my tape? Like, that's all I can tell you. I love football. I play hard, but they're looking at the way you interact with your teammates. And here's another thing too, Brent, that's changed. NIL has changed, and you're getting paid a big chunk of change to
Mhm.
play. You're not getting paid to sit on the sideline. So sometimes these kids want to shut it down, but there's money attached now to somebody's
Yep.
paying you to be on the field, which will be interesting to see.
A lot of issues there. All right, last one is the SEC, who now owns, I don't know, basically the most of the top 10 in the AP poll. I haven't really looked exactly. I think it's
60%.
like 6 of the 10, right? And then most of the
60%. Yeah, I'm not
yeah,
great at math, Brent. That's your department, but yeah,
yeah.
60%, I think.
Is the SEC that good, or is everybody else, I guess, that bad? Or let's just say, is the SEC that good?
I think they are, man. Like, listen, we're always getting information, and that's part of the early season process where it's always hard to say, big bold statements when you've only had one
Yeah.
game, and so like you watch Clemson go out and hit App State in the face with a frying pan this past week, and you're like, holy cow, that like was Georgia that good to beat them like that, or you look at App State and maybe they're not that good. Here's the thing, Texas made the biggest statement so far. Like that
Hmm.
was when you do that to a top 10 team, I don't think Michigan's great, but my goodness, they're one of the better teams in the Big Ten.
True
They're
road
one of the
game.
top. Yeah. And so up when you look at Georgia, when you look at Tennessee made a statement against one of the better teams in the ACC. When you look at Bama, you look at Ole Miss, Bama, Missouri. Here's the thing I don't know about them. All future or former SEC West teams, I know that, but like they haven't played good competition. They haven't looked. Bama hasn't looked elite yet. They've looked okay, but not great. Okay, I still think they're going to be really, really good football teams. So when I look at the compared to the Big Ten, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to do SEC and Big Ten all the time. Penn State Bowling
It
Green
is.
performance, not great, right? Michigan performance against Texas, not great. Ohio State, yeah, obviously they look like Ohio State, but Oregon. Now I got two games, Brent. I got two games of Oregon like beating teams that are very inferior to them that they should destroy and needing a kickoff return and a punt return to beat Boise and not being able to stop, one of the better running backs in the country, but not being able to stop the run game, defense not playing great game two, offense not playing great game one. So I think the SEC is clearly way ahead above anybody else in college football. And obviously the Big Ten is the team the big second conference we talk about.
Yeah, it's one of those where, for me, I think I actually tweeted this maybe a week ago, is that is basically the playoff contenders and or championship contenders, Georgia and their schedule. Because you've got Clemson, Bama, Ole Miss, Texas, Tennessee, and Clemson, for example. That was
Yep.
I've obviously preparing to watch Georgia Clemson. You see and write and talk about some and dive into that matchup. They want to see offense. They hadn't seen offense, actual explosive offense, and they saw it in a big way. That was probably the most unexpected thing they've seen there in a while. You look at the rest of their schedule. If they bring that offense to the table,
Oh,
okay,
because nobody ever denied their defense. Like
yeah,
we know their defense is going to be really, really good. I think they scored on their first 8 possessions. So Yeah, I mean, again,
I
we're
do
gonna
think
still
the
get.
SEC is that good though this year, especially when you think about Michigan looking like Michigan did this past weekend, and just
And Oregon being where Oregon is. Now, here's the
I
thing. Hey, don't forget though, like now we throw USC in there, which is a good thing for the Big Ten because
yes,
USC's already beaten LSU, and they look
hmm
like they're going to be way. Just it's fun to watch USC. Like I remember when I used to walk on the field and I watch interconference games, and I'm just like, look at those bodies versus those bodies. And now USC, they've got huge bodies in the trenches.
yep,
A DC that knows exactly what he's doing. That's done it for a
way
long
more
time.
physical.
No, oh, they know how to do it creatively, and they've got the offense. It's not what it was with Caleb Williams. So USC's in there, but I don't know how you debate the other side. Honestly, like the SEC's been, so far they've been that good.
I will say I was a little disappointed in South Florida's decision to kick the field goal late
Why?
when your
Why would you?
entire
Why would
offense
you
is
kick
based
that field
on
goal?
being explosive and aggressive. Just go for it. The
I
football god said, "All right, we're going to give Alabama the rest of the points in this game."
Yeah, it did. It didn't make a lot of sense. Now, listen, if you're looking at Alabama and you were looking at that score and you were saying, "How the heck is USF in this game?" Alabama fumbled 3 times. Like they played as poorly as they possibly could play. USF played pretty good. But it just if you're at that point and you're in the game, it's just like NIU. NIU is going to go for it. Like they went for it 4th downs. They're going for the
Yep.
win. They know it's a tough place to play. I'm going for the dub. Like I would agree with you. I'd love to see him aggressive, but I'm still interested to see what Bama is. I see
Hey,
the
this week
playmakers.
it's at Wisconsin noon. I think it's a noon kick after
Yeah.
playing late at home, and I'm going to go ahead and do it. I wasn't going to do it, but I am going to do it.
Uh-oh.
Jalen Milroe to me brings a baseball element to their
Oh.
offense.
See, you're gonna
I,
get kicked off my show already. You're doing a
I,
baseball
I have
analogy.
to.
Why are we
This
doing
is a good
this?
one though. I think this is actually a good one.
Well,
You
I'll be
think
the
about
judge of that. What you
the three true outcomes: strikeout, walk, home run.
got?
Milroe
Okay.
is the Kyle Schwarber of like it's colossal 20-yard sack. It's 60-yard bomb touchdown. It's I'm going to run for 10 and keep the offense moving. The efficiency and I think that's going to be interesting to watch because the board they've used him as a runner
Yeah.
purposely in these first 2 weeks and how that evolves as you get into conference play. I think that's going to be the most interesting thing to see with Alabama because there's going to be teams that can kind of stop you and be as physical as you. How do you stay efficient or just depend on the big play? That's going to be interesting to see Alabama as
By the
the
way,
biggest team.
outstanding analogy.
Thank
Like
you.
outstanding. I gotta give you props for that.
Even though I
It
know you hate
is, man,
baseball.
because even though I can't stand baseball, but like I watch him throw routes and I'm like, how did he miss that? And then you watch him throw a deep ball and you're like, oh, it's a beautiful pass. And you watch him scramble around and so he does. He's got that boom or bust, home run or strikeout. It's a good analogy. But boy, can he can motor, bro. Like he can absolutely go. And
He's
that's the difference. He runs at a different level than everybody else that's chasing him.
yep. He's potentially to me the most one of the most dangerous players, if not the most, when he has the football in space.
But 13 penalties and 3 fumbles for Alabama is definitely not something Caleb DeBoer is going to be like, yeah, that was a good game. Like that was a struggle. All right, I hope week 3 is as exciting as week 2 was. College football, it always delivers. Even if the schedule doesn't look great, it always hits the mark. And speaking of hit that subscribe button. The worst part of anybody doing this is asking you to do that. So just don't even think about it. Just hit the button, and we appreciate you viewing the show.